Yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson football channel for your Chelsea news update. If you didn't see this morning's video, it was a bit of a banger with Eunice Talks Football. The link to that is in the description or somewhere here or over there. I always get my hands wrong. For the card on the screen. It was a pretty much instant reaction really to the news that Arsenal have signed Noni Madweke. And I want to talk about it from a kind of different angle today a little bit, because as much as I've posed and asked and questioned the model that we have here at Chelsea quite extensively over the course of the last few months or so, this Noni Madweke sale is one that could either look really good or it could look bad. And I want to pose both sides of that coin. But first of all, Ben Jacobs released a news story today that Chelsea offered Jadon Sancho £180,000 a week, and Sancho turned it down. First of all, this could have been Jadon Sancho briefing to journalists that Chelsea offered him that kind of money so that he can get more money from the next club that he goes to, whether that is Juventus, Besiktas. This could have been tactical from Jadon Sancho, or it's 100% the truth, and Chelsea did, in fact, offer Sancho £180,000 a week. First of all, Jadon Sancho said no to that within Chelsea's incentivised wage structure. Then I think we probably dodged a bullet, because I think that would be overpaying considering what other players in the Chelsea squad are getting paid. I don't think Jadon Sancho deserved £180,000 a week. That's just my opinion. He can get paid whatever he wants, but clearly, that ain't going to be at Chelsea, mate. So, see you later. Adios. Thanks for the season. Goodbye. It didn't work out. Let's be real. So, Jadon Sancho being offered £180,000 a week, if this is true, again, then it does beg the question about what Chelsea could potentially offer for a player like Rodrygo. And I don't want to talk about Rodrygo too much today, because if you want to check out my thoughts on all of that, there's countless videos here on GBFC where I'm talking about Rodrygo. He's one of the top targets for me right now. If it was up to me, it would be Rodrygo or Morgan Rogers. And I think when we see that Chelsea were offering this kind of money to Sancho, plus the fact that we have already made so much money from the Club World Cup and player sales pending right now, Chelsea are actually going to be in a really solid financial position. So I think at this point in time, the way that I would look at this, and obviously this is just my thoughts, and I know a lot of you agree with the sentiment, because you let me know in the flipping comments every day. But if we're going to be making all this money from player sales, Club World Cup, we're not overpaying players like Sancho, then it frees up a lot of potential cash on the wage bill to be able to get a marquee signing, to be able to sign more top players, be it goalkeepers, centre-back, or that lucrative winger position. So, I want to talk a little bit more here about Noni Madweke to Arsenal, because the transfer fee is £52 million. Eunice and I went through that quite a lot in this morning's video. But what I find really interesting about this is there is definitely an opportunity here for Madweke to go to Arsenal and actually improve as a player. And I want to kind of look at Noni as a whole, because last season, as I said in this morning's video, the fact he got that hat-trick against Wolves was kind of always something to fall back on that would not necessarily justify being pretty average for the rest of the season, but it inflated his numbers massively. And as a winger, right, I wouldn't say that Noni Madweke is too good when it comes to passing, seeing passes, passing range and all of that stuff. And I also wouldn't say that apart from taking players on and getting shots away, I don't really see much more to Noni Madweke's game that we couldn't get from a Pedro Neto or a Jamie Gittins or even, of course, an Esteval Willian. So in this case, right, if Madweke's going to Arsenal to play second fiddle to Bukayo Saka, then 52 million from a rival to potentially stop them going out and getting a starting player instead, I think is decent business for Chelsea Football Club. On the other hand, because he's 23 years old, I can fully understand the argument that some have that we've not really allowed for time to develop. And this is where this whole model and my understanding of the model comes into play. Because it's not going to be the case with every player that Chelsea sign that we then go and sell 2 years later for profit on the books, sometimes these players are going to go on to be bigger and better players than they ever were at Chelsea. And that is to be expected. So in that case, you could look case by case and be like, well, we shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, my big concern, but not necessarily a concern, because I think we've got the answer already. If Chelsea are going to sell these players 2 years after developing them, being like, kind of believing this idea that, oh, we put him on a long-term contract, so he's going to be here for a long time, we're building around this player. Don't think Madueke was ever going to be that guy. But I think it's very important that we acknowledge that if we're going to improve with the players that we bring in, then I can't deny that the model will work. And I believe when we look at the attackers that we've brought into the club already this summer, I think Jamie Gittins has probably got a higher ceiling in a Maresca team than Madueke had, based on the 2 years of data that we've got from Noni Madueke at Chelsea. And I also think, in terms of output levels, we're boosting our attack with the signings of Liam Delap and João Pedro at the prices that we paid for them. We've already seen 2 ridiculously emphatic goals from João Pedro in 90 minutes of football from him. So when we're looking at Noni Madueke's stats for last season, if you take out that hat-trick against Wolves, and I believe he scored against Wolves at home as well, take away the goals against Wolverhampton Wanderers, and do you really have a player there that we could be like, 52 million? No, I'm not going to sell him for that. I think Chelsea have done very well in this position here. Because when you look at the players that we have, Neto, Esteval on the right wing, I would have put them both above Noni Madueke. So with that being said, to conclude this, if you're selling your third choice right winger for £52 million, then I think Chelsea must be doing something right. So as much as I've questioned, criticised the model, I will also open the door to understanding here that this could be a prime example of how the model actually does work, because we amortised that signing of Noni Madweke when we signed him, and now to have made money on top of that could well be excellent business. Not to say that I don't think Madweke will explode potentially at Arsenal. If he gets game time, I certainly think he could. Whether that is going to be over Saka, probably not unless Saka's injured, but it could well be on the left wing. So again, thank you to Noni for what you did in 2 years, but I do believe the narrative that he didn't quite progress to a level that Chelsea will have wanted him to. So, I want to talk a bit more here about Nicolas Jackson and the chances for him to leave Chelsea this summer. After Madueke to Arsenal, he could be the next one to try a new chapter elsewhere. AC Milan asked for Jackson, but Chelsea's asking price is still too high. Premier League clubs are also keen and informed. Now, I'm not necessarily informed on this, but based on the logic of things that we have heard throughout this transfer window, I'm going to come up with a little theory here as to what could happen to Nicolas Jackson. I could absolutely see Aston Villa signing Nicolas Jackson and Morgan Rogers going to Chelsea. You guys know it. I absolutely love Morgan Rogers. I think Rodrygo would be a marquee superstar signing. I still think we need a winger. But I would also argue that Morgan Rogers would be a better signing for Chelsea. Someone that can play off the left wing, can also play as a backup to Cole Palmer in the number 10, because João Pedro sees himself as a striker, and so does Enzo Maresca. So if that was the case, then Nicolas Jackson leaving, we'd be making decent money on that move too. It would be like PSR trades basically between Aston Villa and Chelsea, but instead of it being your Carney Chukwuemeka's, your Omari Kellerman's, these would actually be transfers that make sense, that actually improve Chelsea Football Club. But I also want to just stress something here. It's very easy with recency bias to just completely forget the things that Nicolas Jackson is good at. And I know that you guys loved the moment in this morning's video where I asked Eunice, like, do you think he's a good player? Or do you think it's a good thing that he's going or whatever? It was a very funny reply from Eunice. It was very blunt. It was very honest. But I still think Nicolas Jackson can offer something to this Chelsea team. But again, when we're talking about market opportunities, when we're talking about improving the squad to understand the positive side of what this model can be, if you sell Nicolas Jackson as well as Noni Madweke, and bring in Morgan Rogers, having already signed Esteval, Gittins, Delap and Pedro, then Chelsea are without doubt still financially looking good and improving the squad. And that is the way that it has to work moving forward. Because remember, we've also got this absolute baller coming to Chelsea next year. Giovanni Quenda is 18 years old, left-footed, plays on the right wing, obviously could also play on the left. And look at these numbers here. Progressive carries, like progressive passes, shot creating actions, take-ons. We're talking about a serious player. And I think he was the best player at the under-21s. And a lot of you guys have been saying, well, why don't we just pay a penalty? Why don't we pay a fine and just sign Giovanni Quenda this season? Well, in my mind, if Chelsea is still interested in buying Sporting Lisbon, which we've heard that over the course of recent times, if that was the case, I don't think doing this makes much sense, because Sporting, they're also going to be losing Victor Gyökeres. I still think he's going to end up signing for Arsenal. And I think Chelsea here, having already said to Giovanni Quenda at 18 years old, he's very young, sending him back for that next season so that he can continue to develop. I think as much as it would be nice to have all of our new shiny toys all together at once, I think there is a point where we have to say it's either a player right now that isn't a gamble, such as a Rodrygo or Morgan Rogers, and then Quenda can come in. I still think what we're seeing this summer with Madweke being sold, I don't think this is the last time something like this is going to happen. And obviously it isn't. If players don't perform this season, they're probably going to go, because the competition, particularly in that winger position, is going to be higher and higher. Esteval, Pedro Neto, Gittins, Quenda, potentially another player. Pedro, there's so much good talent that Chelsea are stockpiling. And if you're not good enough, you will be sold. And I think this is probably the first time in a video today where I can actually see what we're trying to do here. But again, I'm talking in hindsight. I'm speaking hypothetically. This is based off of the premise and idea that Joao Pedro debut wasn't just a one-off. That Liam Delap is going to be able to bag goals. That Neto will continue the Club World Cup form. And that's the thing about football. You never have definitive answers on things. We can only speculate. We can only gossip. We can only think and believe. But in terms of like getting a deeper understanding of what we're trying to do here, I'm thinking we're playing very well right now. We're looking solid. Players are performing. So I don't think Chelsea will have Giovanni Quenda this season. I know a lot of you guys have been commenting saying, well, why don't we just like pay a fee and bring him from Sporting now? Don't think that is going to happen. But anyway, going to wrap this video up right now. Let me just double check my news folder and make sure we haven't got anything else at this point in time, right? Chelsea's eyes are very much focused, laser sharp on the Club World Cup final this weekend. So I want to give you a little update on stuff. Later on today, if you guys saw yesterday, I went live. I'm going to go live again later on today where we can talk a bit more about the PSG game. If any other news drops later on today, got to go get my barnet trimmed because the world-class matchday vlog of the World Cup final isn't going to make itself, and I want to look good for all of you lot. But anyway, thanks for all the love and support. Check out this morning's video with Eunice if you want to see our thoughts going into that game and a bit more on my opinions on Noni Madweke. But yeah, I can kind of see this working. I hope that Noni Madweke doesn't thrive at Arsenal. Obviously, as a Chelsea fan, we can't hope he thrives. But again, if we make money and weaken a rival, I don't think it's going to happen that way. But if it does, great news. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Come on, you Blues. See you in the next one.